The Times cartoonist has this interpretation of what Donald Trump is trying to achieve with the travel ban. That's Moreland today, while the Telegraph's cartoon has suggests that liberty in the United States is in tatters, or at least in a pile of rubble there, the Statue of Liberty. Well, joining me now are the news editor of the Financial Times, Peter Spiegel, and Sonia Sodha, chief leader writer of The Observer and former senior policy advisor to Ed Miliband. Welcome to you both. Well, what do you think, Peter? Has Mrs. May got a moral compass or not? It's
been a very difficult 24, 48 hours for her. I must say, I agree with Ian on this one in that I think both the commentary in the Telegraph and the Guardian tried to take a very difficult situation for May and brought it into something big and perhaps too big, what it says about Britain and post-Brexit Britain. You know, Ian, I think, gets to the heart of the matter, which is they've been put between a rock and a hard place here. Because of Brexit, they need a bilateral deal with the U.S., a trade deal eventually, so you do have to placate the new U.S. president, like him or not. On the other hand, he has done things which are objectionable to British values. So how do you square that circle? And it's a very difficult position. And I think trying to draw broader conclusions about what this says about Britain and the new global order slightly misses the point. I think it's just a very difficult position she's been put in. And her hand has been weakened. I think whether you're for or against Brexit, you have to admit it's been weakened because you need a deal with the U.S. now on trade.
Sorry, I mean, we played our ace, as it were, a state visit where apparently Donald Trump wants the Queen to watch him playing golf on Balmoral early. Did we play it too soon, do you think?
I think there's a very good chance that we did, and there's a question actually about the extent to which this really is an ace. So we've seen the petition to stop Donald Trump coming over on an official state visit. People want it to be downgraded. That's got over 1 million signatures now for the public. Now, Downing Street is holding fast on this. They're saying this is really important for Britain. They're not going to downgrade the visit, but we will see how long that lasts. There's also, I mean, May is facing pressures from politicians from her own party. It really didn't look great when she gave that statement at the press conference in Turkey, where she said, well, America's immigration policy is a policy for America. It's none of our business. Actually, if you look at what Trump has done, he's put a total halt on refugees from Syria coming over. That violates international norms. She should have called it out straight away, and she's been condemned by MPs from her own party, for not speaking out more quickly on this. Sarah Wollaston wants Trump not to be able to come and address both houses of Parliament, a joint session of Parliament in Westminster Hall. That's actually in the hands of Parliament. So this could get very awkward, I think, for the Prime Minister very fast.
And we know Prince Charles is apparently not too keen, or they're not too keen on each other. But on the other hand, Peter, I mean, your columnist, Christopher Caldwell, who writes from the right in America, but pretty intelligent about all this, I mean, he's basically making the point that he may be doing it clumsily and he may not got it right with using executive order, but really Donald Trump is doing no more than he said he would do.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I of course would never disagree with any columnist in our pink pages. However, and it's been a while since I used to live in my fair country, having lived abroad as a foreign correspondent for the last 7 years. But where I think he's got it wrong is this point where he says, this is what Trump's voters want. And look, I think it is a very powerful narrative in the U.S. political discourse that we are a country of immigrants. And what he points out is this is where the Democrats are actually stronger than Republicans on this. So his column is slightly internally inconsistent, I must argue. So I think that if people think that the 60 million Americans who voted for Trump were in favor of this Muslim ban, I think they misunderstand the American public. At least I hope. I mean, again, I've been out of my country for a long time now.
All I have to say, we did have the outcry when he originally said, Donald Trump is saying we're going to call a halt on all Muslims coming in. Again, there was a petition at that stage to ban him from coming to England altogether. And yet the American people went on and elected him as president.
Yeah, well, I think this comes, it raises the same issue in some ways as has been raised by Brexit that Zoe Williams raises in her column, which is, yes, you have voters vote for a particular person, but is that really a mandate to do, how far does that mandate go? And, some people would argue, well, Donald Trump said he was going to do exactly this. But I think Christopher Caldwell's column is interesting because he is talking very much about the internal American political situation that sort of explains this. And he's saying, actually, there is some support in the US for this policy. Trump definitely thinks that he's got enough popular support. Maybe it's not widespread. We know it isn't widespread, but there are some people who might want to see this, and he's taking a gamble on that. And I think the other thing that's very interesting that he draws out is this thing where, Trump has instructed kind of agencies in the US to keep a record of how many foreigners are committing crimes. And that is a sign that this is just probably the opening salve from Trump when it comes to these issues. Long term, he wants to shift America's immigration policy, a country that was really built on immigration. He wants to sort of fundamentally move away from that.
Peter, what about us? I mean, from your perspective, as someone working for the FT here from America, I mean, have we lost our moral compass?
Well, I mean, Sonia and I were talking about this before we came on. As a guest in your fair country, it has been slightly shocking to me the extent to which all this hand-wringing, not only in the political classes, but frankly in the commentariat, about, we only got the 9th congratulatory phone call to Trump, and are we going to be the first to show up to Washington? No other proper G7 country does this kind of thing. Germany doesn't do this, the French don't do this, the Chinese don't do this, and the obsession with Britain with this special relationship. I just don't get it. I must say, I just don't understand. I mean, you are a proper country, that has a role in the world, and the need to supplicate Britain to the U.S. I don't understand the dynamic.
I actually completely agree with Peter. Now, people around Theresa May, the Prime Minister, would argue, well, we are forced into this position. We need a trade deal from Britain, behind the scenes. This is what we've got to do in public. But actually, I think, if you look at other leaders around the world, Merkel's taken a much stronger stance. Trudeau took a much stronger stance on Twitter, and yet he was still able to get the same clarification that this order wouldn't apply to dual nationals 15 hours before Britain did. So I think there is this sort of misplaced sense of how much power Britain has over President Trump, how much influence Theresa May can have on him. I have to say, I think when it gets down to actually negotiating a trade deal with the US, when you get two negotiators in the room, it's not going to be, oh, well, Trump grabbed for Theresa May's hand, we better give these guys a good deal. It's going to be very much America first in that room. That's what, a trade deal is going to be about from a Trump American perspective.
As someone who grew up on chlorinated chicken and meat that had hormones in it, I turned out okay. But I think if you're going to have a trade deal with the U.S., you're going to have to accept these things. And it is a weakened hand. I think either side is going to have to acknowledge that.
Okay, thank you both very much indeed. Lovely to see you. This is All Out Politics. Up next, what hope for the socialists in the French election?